let's lead off talking about the Bucks, because what else are we going to fucking talk about? The Bucks have been kind of the talk of the town this entire season. They have been very underwhelming at times. They are also still somehow the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, somehow beat the Celtics for the second time this season last night in impressive fashion. By the way, I don't know if you know this. That was Patrick Beverley's second 20-point game of the season, and both of them came against the Celtics in Boston. Or no, I don't think last night was in Boston, but still came against the Celtics. So Patrick Beverley's 2 best games of the season, one with the Sixers, one with the Bucks, belt to ass tour, not leaving any victims. The only player that, I mean, I would imagine he's one of the only players that beat the Celtics multiple times this season. So you gotta be. You got to watch out for the if honestly, I probably underestimated Pat Bev's aura when it comes to being a winning player, and I don't think he's ever missed the postseason, if I remember correctly. He might have given the Bucks a boost, and even can overcome Doc Rivers putting his 35-year-old ass into the starting lineup over Malik Beasley, one of the best starting fives in the NBA this season. I didn't really think that was the problem, but it seems like the Bucks obviously have larger issues at hand, with Giannis going through what they are calling a calf strain. When I first saw the injury, my immediate thought was Achilles. It looked like one. And then after the game, when they said calf strain, I'm like, I've heard that before. But today, it seems like he underwent an MRI and he avoided any major injury. But I don't know what the only takeaway that I have from this is that the Bucks are just cursed this season, I guess.
Yeah. Dame's divorce energy kind of permeated through the team. Like they're going through a midlife crisis. They are the team in midlife crisis right now. Like they've won a title of glory days. That's like having kids, having the wife. Your starter wife leaves, Drew Holiday. You bring in the new second flashy wife. This is very Bill. This
might be. I was gonna say this is Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a Bill. Pretend I'm Bill. You bring in the second wife, Drew Holiday, and she's smoking hot. I mean, she's a dime piece. I love Drew Holiday, but it turns out everything's not so good. Malik Beasley, he's not getting a good deal. You gotta. No, it's Trump. I don't know. I just think that I'm giving up on it. We're pulling the plug on that one. I don't think that they were trying to get Giannis to extend, and they traded for Damian Lillard, which I was like kind of like the hot get out of jail free card that year, but I think it was pretty predictable that Damian Lillard was not going to help a team that already had an established number one as well. Like, he is a floor raiser. I don't think he's a ceiling raiser, though. And I think that this has been pretty predictable from that point of view, where I think I had more hope for the Bucks just in terms of I thought that the Giannis Dame pick and roll would be utilized more often and be more devastating than it is. And it's still pretty good. I was like looking at the numbers the other day. I think it's still like a point of possession or something like that, which is pretty, that's pretty good. It's just not as good as I would like to. And Doc doesn't seem to want to he's not very interested in that. Doc has a very, let's say, Office Space way of doing things when he's coaching a team. So
my favorite thing that Doc has done is, before he was brought onto the team, they asked Bill asked him what he would do to fix the Bucks if he were the coach on the podcast. And on the podcast, he said, it's actually the offense that I'm worried about. It's not the defense. I think the defense will figure itself out. I'm not really worried, even though all the numbers suggested the Bucks had one of the best offenses in the NBA and one of the below average defense. That was their problem. They can't guard anyone. That's kind of been their problem throughout the whole season. Their perimeter defense has been terrible. And unless everyone's healthy and they can kind of devastate you offensively, it hasn't really worked out for them over the course of the season. So Doc obviously takes the job a little over halfway through the season. They are now they're still one game below 500, I believe, with Doc as coach. And the complete opposite has happened. The defense has been better, but the offense has been worse. So I kind of look at this situation that's going on with the Bucks right now. Like I said, I feel like they're cursed. I feel like some seasons you just don't Zach talked about this on his podcast the other day with the Suns. Some seasons, like, you can have talent, you can have all the pieces might feel like they fit, and you either just don't have enough time together to figure it out. You know, Middleton's been in and out of the lineup. Dame and Giannis have both been in and out of the lineup. And now Giannis is probably going to miss at least the first few games of the playoffs. And you have to look at it like they just didn't have enough time to gel, and their faults in terms of being a little bit old, a little bit slow, injured a lot, and just, like I said, not being able to stay in front of anyone, not really being able to kind of, win some games that they probably should have won against much weaker opponents. We talked about that in the last episode. They constantly lose, or at least are in dogfights with like the worst teams in the NBA on a night-to-night basis. And if they had won a few more of those games, they're still likely to get the 2 seed. I think they really just have to kind of, the whole schedule is all over the place right now.
Tonight's a huge game for that. It's Bucks Magic tonight is like one of the biggest Eastern Conference bellwethers. So we'll know a lot more after tonight. But
they play the Magic twice too, and obviously, they said Giannis is absolutely out for the rest of the regular season with this calf strain. And the only historical example I could think of with this calf strain thing was Kevin Durant back in 2019. This is what happened.
I remember.
Kevin Durant has an Achilles injury. And by the way, all the SH in the Discord has pointed this out, the Uniball Discord. The Bucks, I've never realized how delusional Bucks fans were. I saw a Bucks fan say today that the reason they traded for Dame was because if Giannis was hurt, they could beat a team like the Sixers in the first round in the 2-7 matchup. That was not fucking why. Insane. It was absolutely not why. And and I think that what they're going to have to do here is they're going to have to hope for a very favorable matchup. SH calls them cope merchants, basically. They always have some sort of excuse for why the team isn't performing well, why, they'll be able to put things together in the playoffs and blah, blah, blah. And look, there is some data to suggest that when they all are healthy, they are a better team than their record has shown and their net rating has shown. But losing your best player just before the playoffs, and like I said, that Kevin Durant injury from 2019 is really the historical example. He had an Achilles injury, which they then said was a calf strain. He missed the first, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe he played in the first round for a little bit. Then he got hurt, and he missed the entire Rockets series and the entire Blazers series, I believe, or he got hurt during the Rockets series. But someone could correct me if I'm wrong there, but he missed about 4 weeks with that injury, that calf strain. It was a grade 1 calf strain, I believe, which is obviously the best kind of calf strain you can have. Sometimes guys are out for 1 to 2 weeks. And look, Giannis has been kind of a medical miracle at times before. He's had injuries where it felt like he should have been out for longer and he was able to return. But between the fact that Giannis had an Achilles injury and they were very careful with it leading up to this time, and then he has the calf strain on top of that, Kevin Durant famously comes back, and in his first game in the NBA Finals, he tears his Achilles and he's out for the next 2 seasons, right? Didn't he not play for the next 2?
I think it was 1.5. I think he did. I think he started playing the midway through the second Nets year.
Oh, well, COVID hit halfway through the year.
Yes. Yeah. So,
he didn't go to the bubble, but then he came back the next year. It was just 1 year. Yeah, but it felt longer because the season was broken up.
Right.
Yeah.
So, he played the entire Clippers series that year.
I remember he was incredible.
6 series.
Yeah. But he was so good in that series. That was like one of his best series ever.
Yeah, 23, 21, 38, 33, 45, 50.
Yeah, he was incredible. Games. Yeah. And then he got hurt in the second round against the Rockets. Someone just said in the comments he got hurt in game 5 against the Rockets.
Games. Yeah, he played in the first 5 games and then was inactive for game 6. He played 32 minutes in game. It wasn't like he played a pretty good amount of game 5 and then was out the entire Portland series, which didn't matter because they swept them.
Yep.
And and then he missed the first 4 games of the Raptors series, and then played 12 minutes of Game 5 before it happened.
So if you are the Bucks and you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, how do we survive this injury, right? Because you still want to try to get that 2 or I guess my question for you is, if you're the Bucks, who are you angling for here? Because look, I can go down all of the fucking tiebreaker shit. I feel like I'm losing my mind trying to follow all of it for the Sixers. But the reality is that if you're the Bucks, who do you want to face in the first round? Because they have a little bit of say over who they can face in the first round.
But they don't, which is the thing is that by nature the play-in tournament affects it. If the Sixers are in the play-in tournament, I want to be in the 3 seed. Like, I don't want a chance to run up into. I think I told you via text. I think the Sixers are the second best team in the East right now, as currently constructed. They're going to end up. There's a pretty good chance the Eastern Conference Finals end up being round 1 in the 1-8 matchup, with Celtics Sixers. That's like a possibility for this. So if I'm the Bucks, I just want to get away from the Celtics and try not to play the Sixers. But the thing is, you have no control if you're in the 2 seed. They could beat the Heat. The Heat could beat them. Anything can happen in one game. So it's probably easier to just go down to the 3 seed. I still feel pretty good about beating the Pacers if I'm the Bucks, even if they're hurt. I think the Pacers are kind of fraudulent. I'm going to be honest. I don't think they're a very good team. So
okay, so here's the deal. Like I said, they have a little bit of control over if they win some of these games down the stretch, who they can play. So, for example, if they beat the Magic tonight, which people listening to this might be listening after that game is played, they'll know. But if they beat the Magic tonight, that gives the Sixers a better chance, and technically the Heat a better chance of getting out of the play-in. And even if they're in the 2 seed, the Magic play the Sixers on Friday. And if the Sixers win that game, the Magic can fall all the way to 7. And that's where you're looking at a situation where you go, like I said, I don't want to get too convoluted with all the tiebreakers, but if they lose to the Magic tonight, there's a chance that they fall to the 3 seed and the Sixers, they avoid the Sixers in that case. So what you're trying to say is basically it might be better off for them losing this game because they're more likely to face a team like the Cavs or the Pacers or one of these other teams and have the Knicks pass them for the 2 seed and avoid the Sixers and potentially the Heat, who are most likely going to be stuck in the 7-8 if the Magic beat the Bucks in these last few games.
I want to play the Cavs and the Pacers. Those 2 teams are, I think, a lot worse. I think the Knicks can be dangerous, but I think they're just too hurt. I don't think Anunoby's going to be coming back effectively. Randall getting hurt.
He's been good. He's back. He's been good.
He's back, but I don't know. The playoff guy coming back from injury going into the playoffs. I don't know. We'll see.
The thing that I'm worried about with OG the most is his shooting because it's an elbow injury. Last night he shot 4 for 6 from 3, but the game before he was 0 for 5. The game before he was 2 for 4, and then he had a few cold shooting games before when he had the elbow injury. So that's the thing that I'd be most worried about.
So I guess the point is the Knicks are dangerous. Randall getting hurt might actually help their playoff chances.
Let's be honest. It does. It does.
Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
Julius Randle is a good regular season player who in the playoffs has been one of the, I talked about it with Chiodo on the Patreon episode we did the other day. It's not that Julius Randle is a playoff dropper because there are plenty of playoff droppers who are still Joel Embiid is a playoff dropper. Julius Randle is like a bad player in the playoffs. He's not good. He actively harms your team when he's on the court because he turns the ball over a ton. He's incredibly inefficient. He stops the ball on possessions, and his defensive effort from time to time will really wane. It's just not consistent enough. And if that is the case,
sorry. Also, Tibbs is not the on the fly adjustments guy to recognize that in the moment. You're taking this out of the hands of Thibodeau, who is one of the most conservative coaches in the NBA. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
And honestly, I think that I think that losing Randall helps their ball movement. I think losing Randall helps their defense because they have to play defensive-minded guys more often when Randall is out of the lineup. Like, they have to play guys who are incredibly versatile on defense. Like, OG's going to have to play a ton of minutes. Hart's going to have to play a ton of minutes. My thing with the Knicks is, and I've been trying to figure this out, if I'm the Sixers and I'm just looking at this saying, like, if I had my choice, by the way, my thing is I'm staying by this. I don't want to play in the play-in because if Joel Embiid turns his ankle in the first quarter of the play-in game, you might be done. Like, it might be over. Like, we've seen this Sixers team have, the inability to win games without him. Now, with him, they're incredible. They're like going to finish the season 32-8. If they win out here in these last two games, they're going to have a plus 10 or 11 net rating. Like, they're going to be really, really good when Joel plays. But the reality is that when he doesn't play, they're a below average team. They have a -4 net rating. They were, even when Maxey played, they were like 7 or 8 games below 500 without Joel. And if you get into the play-in, the odds of Joel getting hurt and then you losing to the Heat in the first game, and then in the second game, you get the Hawks or whatever. And there's a chance you can go home, which is why I'm always saying, don't worry about your matchup in the first round. Just get out of the play-in and figure it out from there. Having said all of that, if I'm looking at it like, would I rather face the Knicks right now or the Bucks without Giannis potentially? It's pretty obvious that you should want to face Giannis, or the Giannis-less Bucks, I should say. Or at least, maybe he comes back halfway through the series. And the other thing about the Knicks that I've been thinking about is this is a team that a lot of people will say, well, they're overperforming in the regular season because they play their guys a lot of minutes. Like Deuce McBride, Brunson, Josh Hart, all these guys are playing like over 40 minutes right now. And I'm like,
Quentin Grimes, Stephen A. Smith said he's been playing pretty well lately.
Yeah. Isaiah Hartenstein's been great off the bench for them. Yeah. I almost committed seppuku on the timeline when I saw Stephen A. Smith, who works 150 hours a week, misspeak on he has votes for awards, right? I'm so concerned that Stephen A. Smith has award votes and not Bill Simmons and Keith Pompey. I'm not worried about those guys.
Yeah. Stephen A. Smith doing an ethical vibes-based thing. This is the thing. Calculator rats are not any better than this. I'm sorry. Let's fucking drop the getting high and mighty on like Stephen A. Smith. It's a lot of shit from people who want to get paid to write sports and think they can do it better than Stephen A. Smith. I'm sorry. You're not him. I thought Stephen A. Smith answer your question about which Pikmin he thought would fight Emperor Bullbacks the best. And he fucking killed it. He was so good at that. Yes.
I also said this too on the timeline.
Yeah.
Zach Lowe is an analyst. Stephen A. Smith is an entertainer.
Yes.
The reason why Zach Lowe doesn't work 100,000 hours a week on camera like Stephen A. does is because ESPN knows it's part of his job to watch the games and break things down and write things and podcasts and whatever. Stephen A. is on television all the fucking time because he is the god. He is entertaining the masses, and he's doing it better than literally anyone else that I know in sports media could possibly do it. So let's just back off Stephen A. for a second. And yes, he'll get things wrong occasionally. Have you ever had burnout from work? Imagine that, but you're also broadcasting to millions of people. Okay. Would you be on top of your shit 24/7?
All the greatest basketball entertainment minds get things wrong all the time on big platforms. Stephen A. Smith, Sam Sheehan. Yep. I'm sure there's other ones. But I understand his struggle as a guy who's an entertainer first and foremost.
I say this as someone who really should not get these things wrong and should just do his research. But sometimes I just vibe and I say something and then I get people angry in the YouTube comments yelling at me about it. And look, it happens. It happens to all the greats, including me and Sam. But yeah, back to the Knicks. Yeah. The thing that I wanted to say was, I think that the fact that like all of their top guys play those crazy minutes, I do agree that eventually that burns you out and that you can't win 4 series. It's been 2 months of these guys playing 40 something minutes a game, but That's not a team I want to face in the first round because they're in playoff shape. They're in playoff shape already, while the Sixers, especially with Joel Embiid, who is currently trying to play his way into shape but is going to have breaks in between games, teams that are trying to catch up to the Knicks playoff shape-wise might be in some trouble if they face them in the first round. Like, I don't think that teams are as well-conditioned as the Knicks are right now if they face them in the first round. Like, it's really not... Now, you might have individual players on your teams that play a lot of minutes, like someone's pointing out Maxey's top 3 in minutes per game. Sure, Tyrese Maxey is, kind of the exception to the rule here. The majority of guys do not play above 40 minutes a game in the NBA. And I think that could benefit the Knicks in the interim, even if it hurts them in the long term. And if we've seen this with Tibbs teams in the playoffs, where by the second round, they're just kind of fucking exhausted when they have to play every other day and they're just burnt out. But in the first round, that's, to me, I've said, like, my list is Celtics 1, Knicks 2 of teams that I want to avoid as a Sixers fan.
Yeah, the Knicks... Like Jake brings up a good point. I think it's a fair criticism, like they don't have a lot of creation, but Jalen Brunson is kind of fucking him. And he did it already. I saw him take over and kill a team in a series, like maybe the Cavs are frauds and maybe that's what we're about to learn. But until I see Jalen Brunson like really fail in the playoffs, I'm going to trust him to be a genuine top level creator. He's a top 10 player in the NBA. Like those guys, I think we kind of have to adjust for that like Jalen Brunson kind of is him. Like he's kind of in that space, those type of like that. So I'm just going to say very, very interesting. Jalen Brunson, I was so wrong. That's probably the worst take I've ever had on the podcast is that you were a Luka merchant. You owned me king. Get in there.
The funniest thing about that is that if you go back and you look at that, because it's funny because the Mavs are playing tonight. So the Mavs are playing the Heat tonight. And this game actually affects the Sixers because what the Sixers need down the stretch, for Sixers fans who are listening, maybe you're in the future and you realize, oh shit, we're cooked. But what you need is the Bucks to beat the Magic in one of the last 2 games they play them. You need the Sixers to win their last 2 games, including one against the Magic. You need the Pacers. If I remember correctly, I think the Pacers need to go 1-1. Or they need to go 2-0 so we avoid the tiebreaker, like the triple tiebreaker. And then the Heat play the Magic tonight, and the Sixers need the Mavericks to win. And the reason I bring this up is because the Mavericks pretty much have the 4-5 sewn up right now. And the thing about that is 2 years ago, they played Luka in the last game of the regular season because you could quote me if I'm wrong here, but or tell me I'm wrong here, but I think it was Slovenian Heritage Night, and so they wanted him to play. I'm not even joking. I think it was something like that. Or there was someone they were playing, or there was a reason he played in the last game of the regular season, and he fucked up his calf, and he had a calf injury, and he missed the first, it was a Slovenian Heritage Night. So he plays for a little bit, gets hurt, misses the first 3 games of the playoffs, which actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise for the interim because Jalen Brunson cooked. They went up 2-1 in the series without Luka. Brunson was incredible. They make it all the way to the conference finals because Luka comes back fresh, and then they have 2 guys who can create. Brunson was dropped from the playoff rotation a year before by Carlisle. He was forced into the playoff rotation this time around. And then obviously it hurts them in the long run because they lose him to the Knicks. But my whole point on this is that the thing is, we've seen Jalen Brunson do this before. We have seen the Knicks defense lock up in the playoffs. And keep in mind, they didn't play any great offenses last year. Like the Cavs turned out to be kind of fraudulent, and the Heat were not even that great in that series. I know Jimmy missed a game or 2. I think he only missed 1 game, and he played on a sprained ankle for the rest of it. But like, it's not like they were going up against any elite offenses.
The Knicks got kind of banged up in that series, though, too. Didn't like Josh Hart go down and like a couple of other guys ended up missing?
I think it was just Randall was hurt.
I thought there was someone else got hurt. I thought like Josh Hart like broke his thumb. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, never mind.
So. But either way, this is my East rankings right now. I made a caveat here for I have healthy Bucks and injured Bucks. So Number one I have is the Celtics in their own tier. I talked about this last week. The next tier down I have is the second tier, which is these are teams I think could win a series or with the right matchups. With the way that the fucking board is breaking right now, I think these teams might be able to get to the conference finals. So I have number two. It was Quickly that missed most of the Miami series. So there you go.
That's right.
He's not even on the team anymore. So here we go. But second tier I have is the Sixers, who got DeAnthony Melton back last night. He actually didn't look great, but he's still playing his way back. Embiid is starting to get into better shape. He's not looking quite as exhausted. He played a lot of minutes last night in the game. Maxey and Lowry were both sat out, but they should be fine come playoff time. And right now, the playoff odds say that the Sixers are most likely to end up in the 7 or 8 seed with a slight, tiny chance that they get up to the 6 seed. I'm acting as if they are in the play-in, and I'm praying that the board breaks their way and they can get up to the 6 seed and avoid the play-in at all costs. But I still think that right now, as it stands, they are the second best team in the Eastern Conference. And I would go Knicks third in this tier. I would go healthy Bucks fourth, because I just think that the vibes have been really weird with that team. And then fifth, I have in half a tier down, I have the Miami Heat, because they're just the question mark team. Yeah.
I completely agree with all of that. I might give the healthy Bucks the edge over the Knicks, especially in later rounds. I think those two are pretty close.
I'm just going based on vibes this year, dude. The vibes of
Yeah,
the Bucks are off.
Yeah.
Like
That's true.
Every team has a year, because the Bucks haven't really had this year yet. I want to point this out. Every team has a year where it's just like a little bit off. Like talent's there, like on paper it should work, right? 2018, 2019 Celtics should have worked.
Yeah.
2019, 2020 Sixers should have worked. There are so many of these examples of really talented teams. The historical example of this is obviously the 2012 Lakers, who had Dwight Howard and Kobe and Steve Nash. And just for whatever reason, they never put it together. And that's the Bucks this year to me. Like, it's just not enough. Whether it's the team just isn't that good, or they're aging, or it's just, they fired their coach halfway through the season, or it's health or whatever. The Bucks just don't have the vibes this year. Every other year they've lost, I think it was because they had a fundamental flaw with their team or a bad injury. And this year is the first one where I feel like it is just off for them. Yeah.
Divorce. They're in their divorce season. Like, it really was like Giannis, because this is the one where like they were about to start having to pay the piper for like the Drew Holiday trade. They didn't have much to trade. They went all in on the Damian Lillard thing, hoping to become kind of like the Celtics are now, become like a 60-win team that was like unimpeachably great. And then it didn't work. And I think that they're in a lot of trouble now. I think that they've got to start looking for like exit signs. This might be the beginning of the end for Giannis in Milwaukee. I know that's a little, I know ESPN tagline here, but I genuinely think that we're going to start hearing this offseason, like, because I don't think it's insane that the Bucks lose in round one. I think that's totally on the table. And then,
I mean, at this point, if Giannis isn't playing, I would be shocked if they won a series. Like, if Giannis misses the first 3 games of a series, which if you're timelining best case scenario 1 to 2 weeks, he comes back and he risks re-injuring or having a worse injury, then that's the one scenario where I could see them winning a series. If he isn't, like, I kind of think we're looking at a potential of like not only losing in the first round, getting absolutely destroyed by one, because the 7 and 8 seed is just better in the East this year. I know it sounds weird because the East itself is not good, but like the odds right now say it's going to be the Sixers or the Heat. And like, if it's the Sixers or the Heat, we know the Heat can beat the Bucks in a series with Giannis. We know or at least with an injured Giannis again, potentially. And we know that the Sixers are way better than their record because of the Joel Embiid injury. He missed half the season. So going into that series, I would be shocked if they could beat either of those teams. Now, if somehow the Cavs lose out or the Magic lose 2 of the last 3 and they fall into the play-in or whatever, sure, you could talk me into that. And I in my next tier down, when I was going down the Eastern Conference teams, in the next tier, I have only can win a series if they play one of the other teams in this tier. And that's the Pacers, who I had as my 6th ranked team, the injured Bucks in my 7th, and then I had the Cavs and the Magic.
The Magic, I heard Chiodo's spiel. I'm a little higher on the Magic.
You shouldn't be.
I know that.
I talked to Magic fans who were like, this team isn't good enough to win a series. They can't. Okay, here.
They can't
very
score.
Quickly. They can't score. Okay. Their defense is great. I'm not denying their defense is great. They're also one of those teams where their bench unit comes in and plays against other bench units, and that has won them a lot of games. It's why Franz in the bench unit has been, by the way, Franz did just get injured. It's a minor injury, but still. Franz and the bench unit has won them a ton of games, and that's why their plus minus is like crazy in those minutes. Those things go down in the playoffs when teams cut their rotation to 8. Like, the teams that benefit from having good bench units generally struggle to translate to playoff stuff.
I understand that. I understand all of that. Where are the Magic? The only thing are the Magic like transition merchants like those Raptors teams were before? Because like, do they get a lot of their offense from like transition? Like, a lot of bad offensive teams do that.
I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes. I'm also going to say, even if that is the case, their offense is still horrendous. So it's not like your comparison here for like the Raptors, or even if you want to go back to like the Grizzlies, those teams had decent offenses. They were top 12, top 15 offenses. The Magic have a bad offense, even if they're good in transition.
They have so many like good defenders though. Like, so Isaac's 6th man of the year candidate. Like, you know, he comes off the bench. Like, Isaac gives them like a real defensive player of the year style, like wing defender, which is the important part here, to like throw at other guys. I think they could create some weird matchups that like people are not totally ready for. And I understand they're bad on offense. I understand they're like not good shooters. I think there's a chance that Paulo could take a little bit of a playoff leap. He could also get bumped up, you know what I'm saying? But talk about the other teams. You want to talk about a bad vibes team? Look at the Cavs. Look at the Pacers.
Well, I don't think the Pacers have good vibes. The Pacers have been better recently, and I think they have infinitely better vibes than some of the other teams that we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really out on the Pacers.
Now, do you know how many minutes a game Jonathan Isaac is playing?
19, I think.
He's playing 15 minutes a game.
Wow, really?
So how many minutes do we think he can play in the playoffs? Okay. So if you're couching your Magic optimism on a guy who plays 15 minutes a game, that's concerning, because he would basically have to be Scottie Pippen but better in those minutes for me to.
I'm not saying they're going to be like in the conference finals or anything like that. I think that they deserve a little more respect than the Pacers and the Cavs, who are like quiet quitting. So
yeah, actually, Vern brings up a good point. The Magic did beat the Celtics multiple times last season. So is it possible that that's still a holdover?
This season too. Twice, I think. This season.
What's the record against
like
the
last year? I don't know. I think the Pacers did beat us once. Yeah. In the play-in.
Yeah.
Or not the mid-season tournament or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The in-season tournament. Yeah.
So I have the Magic as my lowest here.
Okay.
Mainly because I look at the Magic and I say, I think their defense is going to be legit for sure. But I don't know how they score. And I don't know, like, I feel like this is a team that has playoff drop written all over it in terms of when teams shorten their rotations, when teams have a game plan for this team going into a game. Like, I don't think they have an answer for pretty much anyone that they're going to face in the first round. Is there a team you think they could beat head to head? Because I don't think there is. Maybe the Cavs.
Magic?
Maybe the
Magic?
Cavs. Yeah.
The Cavs and the Pacers.
I don't think they could beat the Pacers.
I think good defense beats good offense. Like, I'm sorry, what do you start with the game plan?
You flipped the saying on its head. It's
I don't
good
know.
offense beats good defense.
No.
Yes, it is.
Not in the playoffs, maybe. Not in
Yes,
the playoffs.
it is.
No. I'm just saying, like, what's going to happen is Jalen Suggs is going to be on Halliburton, okay? Halliburton, who's like actively playing injured and is like basically just trying to crawl his way to getting his bag. You have Pascal Siakam, who has been on bad teams and for a long time and is one of the least valuable things in the NBA, which is a power forward that can't really shoot or space the floor. And that's going to be fucking death in the playoffs. I understand that the Magic can't shoot. I trust them to cobble something together, and I think the talent discrepancy is big enough. Like, we're talking about like fucking Aaron Nesmith. Buddy Hield isn't on that team anymore. There's no spacing. Miles Turner showed up for the playoff vibes. They have the vibes of frauds. So
we will we're gonna agree to disagree on that one for now. Let's revisit it when we see what the matchups are, because I feel like when we get closer to seeing what these matchups actually are in the playoffs, I feel more confident about making predictions on these. Because the reality is that one of these middling teams is going to win a series. Because the way that the board is breaking right now, it's possible the Celtics might have some all-time fucking luck here. We have a chance that if the board breaks a certain way and the Sixers get out of the play-in and the Heat win their fucking first round series, it's possible that the one side of the bracket, it's possible, it's not likely, but it is possible, that the one side of the bracket has the Knicks, the Bucks, the Sixers, and the Heat in it. And then the other side has the Cavs, the Magic, and the Pacers, which is the ultimate fucking cakewalk to the conference finals if you're the Celtics. And that's not super likely. I still think that the Sixers Heat play-in is the most likely pathway here. But as of now, there's at least a slight chance in terms, if you look at the playoff probability report, it is very likely that's what ends up happening. But the Sixers and the Heat both have a chance to escape from the play-in, and then that flips everything on its head because the Celtics could have basically the easiest path. But what did you think of Bontemps saying that the Celtics, what did he say? Well, if the Celtics, if they don't go 12-2 and walk their way to the fight, they are the largest frauds we've ever seen in my entire life.
Bars. He's so right. I was nodding along. I was snapping like a beatnik. Like I love. He was everything he said was correct, and it wasn't even. It was just like matter of fact Bontemps. Because I think what Zach did is he asked everyone, like, who's the team most likely to beat the Celtics? And Bontemps just goes, the Celtics. And everyone's like, no, you can't do that. And Bontemps just goes, this is like, he said, you made the exact point you just made. And the one that I'm going to, if they don't end up playing the Sixers in round one, this is going to be not since. This is like remember when the Hawks, the year that the Sixers played the Hawks, they had a similarly like easy board. And that's why I said in the group DM, I'm starting to get a little nervous because I always say what is going to happen is whatever is funniest. That is like, you can usually predict the future by predicting what is the funniest thing that could happen here. And we're rapidly going towards a future where the 7th seed, the 8th seed, the Sixers and the 7th seed lose to the Heat in the play-in, play the Celtics in round one and beat them.
Hold on, but you didn't extend on that, which is the thing that Will talked about. They then get to the second round.
Has an addendum. Yeah,
they then get to the second round and they play the Orlando Magic and they lose in 7. Which, to be fair, as I've said before, I would take that.
Yeah.
I would take it.
Yeah.
I would be like, this would be fine with me. I would be totally fine with that happening. But, the reality is that the Celtics have no excuse to not at least cakewalk themselves to the conference finals, even if they get the Heat in round one. And then from there, I think that they should be the heavy favorites in the Eastern Conference Finals at a minimum. We'll see which team can make it outside of the other bracket. Like I said, my rankings would go Sixers 1, Knicks 2, healthy Bucks 3. But I kind of think that the Celtics don't really have an excuse not to win the conference running away this year. There's really only been like 2 teams that have won the amount of games that the Celtics have won this year that didn't cakewalk all the way to the finals. And it was, if I remember correctly, it was the Suns 2 years ago who won like 64 games and lost in the second round and 7 to the Mavs. And then the We Believe Warriors year when the Mavs went 65-17 and lost in the first round in the 1-8.
One more. There was the Spurs year when they won like 65 games, but the Warriors won. Yeah, whatever. But
the Thunder beat them that year.
Yes. That was the other one. That was in round 2, and that Thunder team was really good. So they almost beat the Warriors.
Okay, 2018 Rockets is another one, but did they? How many games did they win? 67. Well, yeah.
7? Is that true?
Remember they had that insane record with Clint Capella, James Harden, and Chris Paul. I think they went like 55-4 or something. They did make the conference finals, but they didn't make the finals.
That is true. No, 65-17. Yeah,
that's still like that's what the Celtics are really probably going to end up with, right?
Yeah,
they have 64 wins right now, I think.
Yeah. They still made the conference finals and they lost in 7 to and at the time, like they acquitted themselves pretty well. Like I feel like that's the closest a team came to beating a fully healthy Durant, Steph Curry team.
Yeah.
So,
although you know what Draymond says about the Rockets, right?
No.
Draymond's such a shithead. We were never losing to that team. I'm like, you almost did. What are you talking about? This is why I hate that we could just rewrite history if you have a podcast and just be like, he's like, he talked about like teams that were threats to the Warriors and how if they didn't get KD, they would have probably lost to the LeBron Cavs in the finals in 2017. And then they asked, JJ Redick asked him, and he goes, well, what about the Rockets that almost, they took you to 7, they almost won, Chris Paul gets injured, and Draymond just says, we were never losing to that team. I'm like, we probably should have known 3 or 4 years ago that Draymond was like completely unrecoverable as a psycho when he said we were never going to lose to the team that took us to 7 games and missed 27 straight threes in a close game and lost.
Yeah, like if they hit 2 threes, I think they win. I think if they shoot like 18% instead of like 11 or whatever the fuck it is, like, they win. Yeah. And also, Chris Paul got hurt, as we've covered. Like,
yeah, and also, if you want to look at the Celtics, I mean, at least they don't rely on taking a lot of threes. The variance gods will always punish you for shooting 100 threes in a game. If you guys want more proof, and I'll say this when Sam gets back, if you want more proof that the Bucks season is just completely cursed this year, they beat the Celtics twice this year, and Giannis got hurt in the second game. Like, the team that everyone thinks will just cakewalk to the finals, the Bucks destroyed them once, and yes, the Celtics were in the second half of back-to-back. The Bucks still destroyed them. And then the Bucks beat them pretty handily last night, and yes, the Celtics were down 2 players. But the Bucks have beat them handily twice now this season. And in that second game, Giannis got injured. So you're telling me that's not proof that this team is just completely cursed and the vibes are just off? I feel like this is the universe's way of punishing them for hiring Doc Rivers halfway through the season.
Bill with a good point. Boston's nightmare playoff run in the East, Atlanta, Orlando, Milwaukee. I agree. That's
the only teams they've split with this season.
Yes.
I know you're gonna go on I actually had written down here the Hawks. By the way, I tuned into the Hawks Heat game on stream last night. The Hawks are the most maddening team I've ever seen in my entire life. They drive me absolutely fucking insane. And I know they didn't have Trey, but they're worse when Trey and DeJounte play together than when they're apart. Did you know that the Hawks right now have 2 of the worst lineups in the NBA data-wise?
Yep. It checks out.
The worst lineup in the NBA is DeJounte, Trey, Capella, I think it's Sadiq Bey and DeAndre Hunter.
That makes sense because you would need to have a coach who's capable of adjusting that, but instead you have a fraud who's just trotting out the same lineup and watching them getting buzzsawed down every night. So
what would be your solution? Playing 39-year-old Wes Matthews?
No, I would play Jalen Johnson 1 million minutes.
Well, he does play a lot for them. They really don't have a choice. And now that Sadiq Bey's out, he can't even play Sadiq Bey. Hunter is like, what if Tobias was worse? Watching their games is like, I'm watching them, rooting for them last night, like pulling my fucking hair out. Like, can this guy just be normal for 2 minutes? If he was normal for 2 minutes, they beat the Heat, and then the Sixers are going to be out of the play-in. But instead, they can't hold on, and now they've basically fucked over the Sixers unless the Heat lose one of these last few games that they have remaining. But man, the Hawks, like, I'm pretty certain that the Hawks are going to beat the Bulls in that 9-10 matchup. Just, I don't know if I am though, because that's one of the only things that's locked in right now in the East is that the Bulls and the Hawks are played in the 9-10. It doesn't really matter, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But here's the thing.
Oh, it matters. My Atlanta Hawks are going to save me.
All right, here's why it matters. If the Sixers go into the play-in and their pathway to get to the 7 seed is they have to beat the Heat and then relive the nightmare of the Hawks. That is like immersion therapy for them. If they lose that, I think Joel and Tobias are literally the only players left on the roster from that series. But if the Sixers lose the Heat play-in and then the Hawks play-in, it might be time to look in the mirror and say, what's the next move here? Because that's the ultimate existential crisis path for the Sixers. The other way you got to look at it is, I think the Bulls are a better team in terms of they have lineups that make sense more than the Hawks. Like, if DeJounte and Trey play together, the Hawks are just a bad team. If they don't play together, they split them up, they're fine. We have 2 years of data to show us that when one of them is out, the team is a better team and can survive some of the defensive deficiencies that backcourt brings together. But if you are the Sixers or the Heat and you're in that 7-8, you definitely prefer the Bulls to get out of the play-in as opposed to the Hawks. Because the Hawks are just that kind of team that the Heat learned it last year. They got a random good, like a random good Hawks game. They put it all together in one game last year, and they knocked them down to the second play-in game. So, like, if I'm looking at it like who has the best chance to get into the playoffs from the 9-10, I think it's the Hawks because I trust the Hawks to win 2 games back-to-back. But I think head-to-head they might just lose against the Bulls and then blow that team to smithereens this offseason.
Yeah, that's how I think this goes. By the way, that's like a fun little thing. Can you imagine if the Hawks had not won that game and the Celtics just got to smush the Heat in round 1 before they got their nightmare momentum, devil magic?
This is what I'm not even joking. This is what I've been saying about the devil magic, because I watched them play, the Heat and the Hawks play last night, and now Hayward Highsmith is a 40% three-point shooter. This guy was like a 29% three-point shooter for most of his career, and I'm watching him shoot 40% from 3 for the Heat. And I'm watching and I'm going, even when things look bad for the Heat, even when it's like you have, like I said, the existential crisis loss, they lose to the Hawks in the play-in. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Losing to the Bulls in the play-in. They're trailing in the fourth quarter, have to have a crazy comeback. And all of the fucking shit that happens leading up to that moment, they have a crazy comeback. They win, they get into the playoffs, and then they get to the NBA Finals as an 8 seed. Even when things go bad for the Heat, they go right.
Yeah. I hate them so much. It's going to feel so good. It's going to feel so good sweeping them. It's going to feel awesome. I want that. I want the Heat round 1. Bring me. The Heat are going to try to escape from us. They're going to try to beat you guys. I need the Sixers to do what they were put on God's earth and send the vile Heat to their maker. Send them to me round 1. I want it.
Well, the Sixers and the Heat played last week, and the Sixers didn't even play well and beat the Heat somehow. Kevin Love had 17 rebounds in that game off the bench. I'm not kidding. He had 17 rebounds off the bench in that game, and I was pulling my fucking hair out watching it, dude. I was like, you have to be Bam Adebayo. I think the final score, the Sixers won by 3. Bam Adebayo was like a negative 20 in his minutes, and they lost by 3 points because Kevin Love came off the bench and, like I said, had 16 or 17 rebounds, including like 9 offensive rebounds that got extra possessions for the Heat. And the thing about the Heat is, and this is why I've been comparing the Knicks to them, is that they just have random guys where it's just like, okay, this is God, we're going full bill on this episode, but
let's go.
This is the Kevin Love game. This is the Hayward Highsmith game. This is the Jaime Jaquez game. They just have so many role players that, like, on any given night can be completely unplayable. Like, Gabe Vincent is a corpse for the Lakers right now. Do you know what Gabe Vincent is shooting from the field for the Lakers?
I thought he was doing pretty well since he came back from injury.
He's been literally horrible. Now, they might be winning his minutes because he's playing with LeBron and AD a lot, but he is currently shooting from the field on the season. He had another 0-point game last night where he went 0 for 3. He went 0 for 2 in the game before that, 0 for 1 in the game before that, 1 for 4 in the game before that. He is currently shooting 31% from the field for the Los Angeles Lakers, and he has only played in 9 games, 20 minutes a game. And this is the thing about the Heat. It's like, even though in my brain, everything tells me they're done. Like, I've watched a lot of them recently because I have to, because the Sixers and them are jostling for position in the standings right now. And there's just nothing that I can like put logic to. Jimmy Butler is not the same guy anymore. Like, Bogdan Bogdanovic blocked him at the rim twice last night. Like, he can't jump anymore. And they won in double overtime in that game. And nothing makes sense with them. Like, it's driving me mad. It's completely driving me mad. Like, if they do it again, I just give up on trying to analyze basketball. There's just nothing we can possibly do. They're not a good team. Like, why? Like, they're not good. I don't even think in a regular conference, I don't think like, if they were in the West, they wouldn't even make the playoffs. And because they're in the East, they get the Hornets, they get the Hawks, they get these easy fucking teams in their division, the Wizards, and they sweep their division every year, and they get into the playoffs because of it, and they might just fucking figure it out again. It's driving me mad.
I don't think they're going to do it. I think last year was just such a convalescence of the Devil Magic, because the year before, the Heat were the 1 seed the year before.
They were good the year before. That team was actually, that was like the last good Lowry year. Hero was pretty good for them in the regular season. Bam really broke out. By the way, did you know that Bam is the 2nd worst jump shooter in the NBA behind Russell Westbrook this year?
Oh, did you hear Zach shamelessly like put him in there for like a defensive player of the year thing?
Whatever.
Like I was like, because he said Bam's name before he said Herb Jones's name. I was like, come the fuck on. Like, what are you doing?
Whatever. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, like, can we just be normal about Bam Adebayo for once? Like, he's fine. He's a borderline all-star, very good defensive player with some really big offensive deficiencies that in the playoffs, he's had some nice runs. He's also been terrible in certain series and matchups. Like, I just wish we were normal about Bam for fucking once, dude. It's so fucking, he's so overrated. It's crazy. I wish we could go back in time and give the so underrated he's overrated award to Bam Adebayo from the YKB Awards.
We should have, yeah.
He is. He's so overrated, dude. Like, it's crazy. Anyway, yeah. I mean, like, I kind of am just like, can he switch? Can he switch onto the perimeter and guard guards? Yes. Can he protect the rim well? Not particularly. Like, he's not like a great rim protector. And rebounding wise, like, he has certain games where he's great, and then other games where he gets the wrong matchup and he gets absolutely destroyed on the boards. He's not a good jump shooter on offense. He's a good passer. He's not an elite one. Like, he can be, he's versatile, and that's why people love him. But like, he's the 23rd best player in the NBA. Anyway,
and I feel like you're being pretty generous there too. I think he's probably more like 30, to be honest. But
anyway, God, it drives me insane, dude. This is perfect what Ben's saying in the comments right now. A lot of analysts have never gotten over the peak Warriors switch everything brain, which leads to Bam getting overrated. That's what it is. All analysis is if you can switch, you're good on defense, and if you can't switch, you're bad on defense. When we see time and time again, teams that run drop coverages and like what Jokic does with the cat and mouse game in Denver, you can have good playoff defenses. Like it's
That was the exact counterexample I was going to make, is that like Jokic has become a really good defender by like figuring some of this out. Because we were like arguing about MVP stuff, and like one of the points I say about Jokic's first MVP season is he was not the same guy on defense. He's become a really good defender like over the course of the years, and now he's like a pretty good defender, and he doesn't switch anything. He's our lovable chunky king. Like he's not switching shit on the perimeter. He's just out here vibing, and the Nuggets can get away with that, and they have a totally fine defense, so it's fine.
What Sam is trying to say is Sam Edey top 10 pick, or Zach Edey top 10 pick.
Sam Edey, but only when Sam hungry.
Your internet didn't drop. I'm going to throw up because of that statement.
Okay, I was sure you were. I think it did drop, because otherwise you would be hands on knees in hilarity. Classic Sam.
I think I've been hanging out with you too much because my brain has become like, how can I have the contrarian opinion on this thing? And like when everyone was shitting on Zach Edey the other night, I was like, I don't know. I kind of wanted to want to find a case for Zach Edey being like a legit lottery talent.
Dude, it's so fun. It's so fun. The contrarian talks to you like the Green Goblin mask in fucking like Spider-Man. Like, because I'm doing the exact same thing. I think I'm going to say Edey should be a lottery pick, actually.
Let's go. Yeah. Honestly, in this draft, I know you're doing the contrarian thing where you're trying to say this draft isn't actually that bad. It is this bad. I'm telling you, I've been watching a lot of shit, and I'm like, this is a bad draft. And the thing is that everyone will say there's no such thing as a bad draft. Yes, there is. Like, because you have to compare it to other drafts. Because otherwise, what's the point of doing this?
Yeah.
There will never be a draft like 2000 again. I think we're past that. I think that's the only draft historically that had no star players in it at all. The odds are that one of these toolsy guys or one of these super young guys or maybe even an older guy who hasn't been given the opportunity will break through and make some all-star teams at some point in their career. And there might even be multiple guys that do. But if you compare it to a good draft, this draft is filled with upperclassmen that are going to fit a role on certain teams. And I'm not even certain that like Dalton Connect and Devin Carter and the guys that like probably are going to go in the top 20 are going to be that. And even the prospects that are younger and like, I could talk myself into like Reed Shepherd, Rob Dillingham, Cody Williams. They all have their own kind of deficiencies that I think that in an average draft, there's usually one or two guys I can point to. And like 50% of the time, like last year is a good example of like, obviously Wembanyama being the all-time outlier, like generational prospects. But even beyond that, like Scoot, Amen Thompson, Brandon Miller, you were pretty certain that one of those guys, if not two of those guys, maybe all three, were going to hit and become star level players. And I look at this draft, and maybe it's just because it's more international based. I don't see it quite like that.
It's not. I don't think Sarr is good. I think the other French guy, Richauser,
Zachary Richier.
I like him. I think he actually probably should go number one in this draft. He actually has a lot of good indicators. But Sarr and Topic are just guys to me. Like they're fine lottery picks.
That guy has been really bad recently, but also some people are saying that he's hit a rookie wall, and that tends to happen around this time because he's just not used to playing as many games as he's played.
I did my draft profile to kind of see which were going to be my guys and stuff like that, and I might come off there are no bad drafts because there are some pretty. It is tough. It's lean out there.
What would you say is a bad draft? Because my thing is 2013 and 2015 are probably the worst in terms of they don't have 2015 has a little more depth. 2013's depth isn't good. its top end talent turned out to be really good, but there was no way anyone could have known that Giannis and Gobert were going to be Giannis and Gobert.
Right.
And same with Jokic in 2014. But that's a strong draft.
I think those drafts are better. I don't like, what was the Zion Ja draft? I don't like
2019. But
that was a bad draft.
But the thing about 2019 is that everyone knew at the time. It's not like it's not like now we're saying what we're saying in 2019. The difference being that Ja and Zion were the obvious that stood above everyone else. It was consistently called a 2-player draft, and honestly, that's bared out over time. Like, even the third best player from that draft is who? Darius Garland. And Darius Garland probably will only make one All-Star game in his career.
But what I'm saying is, like, people say that all the fucking time, though. The 2016, the Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram draft was a 2-player draft, quote unquote. And that was a great draft.
I don't think it was a great draft. I think that's
2016?
No, I don't think that's a great draft. I think it had a lot of good players, but it didn't have one superstar.
It had Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown, Jamal Murray, Pascal Siakam, Domantas Sabonis.
It had
DeJounte
depth,
Murray.
It had depth of second, third tier stars. It had no superstar.
I guess that's the difference in how we see the draft, is because I see it as a crapshoot getting like a franchise player, like even at the top of the draft. So I just think that a draft needs to be viewed on how likely are you with a pick in this draft at a certain position to get an NBA player, because that's the most, honestly, getting a rotation player from like the lottery on as a win. Like, and I think people don't like see it like that, because sometimes guys that just can play rotation players, sometimes they just develop into really good players. Like later on down the line, guys like Herb Jones just turn into good players. Like,
but that's like such an outlier. That's like one guy. There's like one or two guys like that in every single draft.
How about like Trey Murphy then? Like, let's just use Trey Murphy as an example.
Trey Murphy was like the 17th pick of the draft.
That's what I'm saying. That's like and he was like a rotation player, and now he's turning into like a pretty good player. Like, you just have to like hit singles. I don't think there's going to be a lot of guys like even like that in the draft. And that's why I don't like that 2018 draft, because you go through a fucking brutal stretch there where it's like Romeo Langford.
2019, not 2018, which is like the all-time great draft.
Yeah, sorry. I meant, the one that I was making fun of before, the Zion Williamson Ja one. It's like, there's Tyler Hero, but then after that, it's like Romeo Langford, Sekou Doumbouya, Chuma Okeke, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's like kind of turned his career around, but was like not very good for a while there. Goga, Lukas Samanic, Thibault. And then you get to like Brandon Clark and like Grant Williams are like rotation guys, but like
Claxton was a 2nd-round pick in that draft. Jordan Poole was a late first.
So that doesn't help though.
I mean, Jordan Poole was exactly what you're describing though. He was a rotation player and he was at the end of the first round.
Right. Yeah. Well,
you can't have it both ways though. You can't say you're lucky to get a rotation player outside of the lottery and then have a guy who was a bench player on a championship team and say that it's not a good pick.
Let me give you an example, okay? I really like Cole Anthony. I think Cole Anthony was a good draft pick. If they paid Cole Anthony $30 million after his rookie extension, I would think that was not a good allocation of things.
Well, Cole Anthony was a bad pick because they interviewed Tyrese Maxey and should have just taken him instead, but fair.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Maxey actually says in an interview, because we tried to figure it out after the Heat game last week, because he destroyed the Heat in last week's. It was one of the best games of his career. And we were like, it's either the Heat or the Magic, because he thought that he was getting drafted by one of those teams. He met with the Heat, Mavericks, and Magic, I think. And he tends to always go off against those kind of teams. But I'm going to be honest. I kind of think that the reality is that, like, I don't disagree that it's like, it's good to get a rotation player outside of the lottery, but that almost shouldn't determine whether a draft is good or not to me. Like, I think that the when we always look back at drafts and we say, wow, that was an amazing draft, it's because it had 2 franchise-changing talents in it, which a handful of do throughout the history of the NBA. Like 2018, 1996, 1985, or whenever the Jordan Hakeem Barkley draft was. 2003, the LeBron Wade Melo draft. Like, I'm not saying that you need to have that to be a good draft, but if you want to make an argument that it is a great, like, all-time draft, it has to have multiple, like I said, franchise changing talents like those drafts did.
I'm just saying, like, when I look at a draft for a team, like, for example, teams are like trading out of their picks for this draft because it's a bad draft, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a bad idea if you're not getting a good deal, like if you're like not picking in the top 5. You know what I'm saying? I think pretty much like after what's his name? Klingon, who's probably gonna go like top 5, like you're it's kind of a crapshoot, like which guys are gonna be like NBA rotation players after that. And I think 1 or 2 of them will probably end up being all-stars. It usually ends up that way, where there's some guy picked 30 or something like that who has like a fringe all-star career. Your Desmond Bain, if you get lucky, it's a Tyrese Maxey, or a Pascal Siakam or someone like that. Generally speaking, it's not. I think it'll be fine. I think Trill, I think you're getting a little feedback. I don't know if your thing needs to get plugged in. Yeah, but it's just I think. But my thing is, I went through this draft and like I'm looking at like Jacoby Walter, who has like a lot of like red flags, but is like a movement shooter, and I still think he should probably go top 10.
Yeah, I don't think Jacoby Walter's good. That's the thing. It's like I'm also keep in mind, I'm also like I basically am against drafting for shooting in the lottery almost always. I really think that you should be drafting for tools and then hope that you can mold the shooting. That's like kind of been my thing, because like everyone always says, when do those prospects ever work? And I'm like, every single prospect who's basically ever been an all-time player has had that kind of mold, except for like Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Like it's like everyone at least reaches a different level as a shooter, I should say. Like or there are certain examples where like there are outliers like Russ and Giannis where they're so athletic that they don't even need to become good shooters. But my whole thing is that I think that shooting and movement shooting is incredibly overrated. If you're it's the reason why I thought Grady Dick was not a lottery talent last year.
But here's the thing though, is if you do end up getting fucking, I don't know, Grayson Allen, somehow, you know what I'm saying, with your pick, is it really that much worse to pick Sekou Doumbouya, who was very toolsy? You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, Sekou Doumbouya had a lot of signs he shouldn't have even been drafted as high as he was. He was a guy that was literally like, he was bad at basketball. It wasn't like Kawhi Leonard, where like Kawhi was like a defensive monster in college and then happened to put together everything offensively. But at the same time, like, I mean, to me, like and this has been my point, I could care less about getting Grayson Allen in a lottery of a draft, because you can always find Grayson Allen. That's my thing.
I don't think you can.
Grayson Allen has been traded twice in his career for very little.
Now he's not going to, because now he's good.
I don't know if that's true. I think shooters have small windows of relevance in terms of like being high level, top notch impact players. And I think the best shooters float around the NBA every year that are just shooters.
That's true.
Now, I'm not saying that guys that don't have other tools that also are elite shooters. Like Maxey's a good example of someone who like was not a shooter and then they turned him into a shooter over time. Like that's a different prospect to me. Grayson Allen is like, I could trade second round picks and get Grayson Allen. Find the next Grayson Allen.
But what I'm saying is you're better off like drafting like Derek White, developing him. He's not going to be good. Like the Spurs were years and years away when they drafted Derek White. They were a dog shit team.
I'm talking about. He was an athletic, toolsy guy. Derek White was not a shooter.
Okay, I don't think
this is just a.
I disagree with you. I disagree.
What? No, there's nothing to disagree over. Derek White couldn't shoot.
All right, I don't think. Okay, all right. There are like obviously there's going to be guys. There's guys like Romeo Langford who like could not shoot, and guess what? He never learned how to shoot, and he was very toolsy. He was like a top 5 prospect coming into the NBA.
He was horrible in college. Drafted him. Yes, I agree. Yeah. I'm not saying you should draft bad basketball players because they're athletic. You have to have some form of production at a certain point. The only case I can ever think of a guy that was super athletic and had no production in college and then turned out to be a good NBA player is Jaden McDaniels. That's basically it. It's him and Zach LaVine. Yeah, but even Brown didn't have a negative BPM as a freshman. Like
his analytics were like historically bad.
Yeah, but they were not as bad as, I'm telling you, Levine and McDaniels are the only freshmen in the last 15 years to have a negative BPM, get drafted, and become starter level players in the NBA. Like the guys you're describing, like Romeo Langford was terrible in college. That would be like, to me, like I'm like, for example, DJ Wagner. I would not draft DJ Wagner. Maybe Gigi Jackson is the example where he was terrible in college and he figured it out in the NBA, and he's the next guy that makes me look stupid here. But like, I think that more often than not, you have to have some sort of balance of production, athleticism, and whatever.
By the way, I like don't disagree with that. Like, I think Bilal Coulibaly was a good pick for the Wizards, especially given the draft and given where that was, because that he's a guy you're talking about. He's a very toolsy guy. He's like very raw, but has a lot of some of this stuff. He's not a good shooter. Probably will be fine. And I think that was fine for where they were in that draft. There weren't a lot of other guys. I'm talking about like I think that sometimes bad teams try to make up getting a franchise star with their swing instead of just taking like a very average player. And sometimes and those guys just turn into things you can trade for more picks or for a better young player down the road with your own draft picks. I'm just saying that teams need to like focus on hitting singles. And I think there's way too much focus in the draft on like trying to hit home runs. Like, and I just don't think that is. Anyway, my point is that this draft, it doesn't have a lot of singles in it either. I think there's not going to be a ton of guys who stick in the league.
Someone asked who's the most toolsy guy in this draft. The two, I think, just based on my brief knowledge that I have, are Sarr and Holland, Ron Holland, from the G League, who's like,
do you want to take any of those? Do you want to? Because I would take either of those.
I would take the risk. I would take the risk on either of those guys at the top end in this draft because I just think it's a bad draft. But I wouldn't feel great about it. I mean, like Sarr is 7 foot and he's incredibly athletic, very good on defense. You hope the offense comes around. And Holland's kind of the same thing. He's like an elite wing defender who, at least has shown some touch. He's pretty good around the rim. His free throw numbers are good. The shooting and the creation is like, it's a Jaylen Brown, Cam Whitmore type situation where like, you're just hoping that the small touch indicators that they've shown can be grown into a better player over time. And that's, like I said, that's the kind of risk, because I'm not going to cry I missed out on Dalton Connect. Like that's Grayson Allen to me. Like if Dalton Connect becomes Grayson Allen, but I'm just saying if
I don't like him either.
but what I'm saying is that's the kind of player that he is that he is in the mold of a Grayson Allen, older prospect who's like a really good shooter and scorer. And if he turns into fifth starter level guy, I'm not going to cry home about it that I missed out on this guy when I think I could just go get Luke Kennard or a few years ago with Seth Curry or Buddy Hield or whoever and fill in the gaps a lot of the times. Like, I think that movement shooters and shooters in general have been incredibly overvalued to the point where I just would rather draft for other skills is my point. But anyway, there's always outliers too.
Troy Weaver Trill is here.
There's always outliers too. Like Klay Thompson was an outlier where he was such a good shooter and a capable defender that he makes this argument just completely throw it out the window because he's so good. But in general, I'm not like, if you have no creation ability and you're just a movement shooter and you have questionable defense, I'm like, couldn't be more out on that archetype of player. And Isaiah Joe isn't that. Isaiah Joe was like a Klay level shooter in college and was a very, very good team defender in college too. So that's the difference between that kind of guy and the guy that I'm describing. So anyway, let's go over to.
By the way, Derek White shot 39.6% from three.
How many? What was the volume on that?
4 per game.
Okay. I was wrong on Derek White. I apologize. But I will say this. Derek White was not a great shooter until he got to the Celtics.
No, not in the NBA for sure. Yeah.
He was an above average shooter and he has become a great shooter. And that is, you want to talk about outliers. He was like 27 when traded for him. Like he's not someone that you can use as a template, but he was, to be fair, he was drafted because he was a good basketball player and went to a small school. Didn't he go to Colorado State, I think? Or
Colorado.
He went to
No,
Colorado.
it was just Colorado. Yeah.
He transferred his last year. It was like a Dalton Connect, Austin Reeves type thing. He went to a smaller school originally. He went to like look at it on his Wikipedia.
Oh yes, UCCS. Yes.
Yep. I was like I know that he did because I remember him being one of that. That might be just last thing on the draft here. That might be like kind of the new market inefficiency is like guy who went to a small school, then went to a big school, balled out his last year. Like that kind of guy is like. Because the transfer portal and the NIL shit is becoming more common.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is you should draft DJ Burns in the top 5. No, I think he was.
Yeah.
I think he went to Winthrop. He went to 3 different colleges. If you're rating guys on how many colleges they went to, DJ Burns should be number 1 on your board.
I'm taking Lily Van Life. Let's get her in the Celtics. Stop her. Caitlin Clark, stop her. Except for the most recent one.
Yeah. So let's move out to the West now. I'm sorry that we went on that tangent about the draft while the playoffs are a few days away, but we had to cook.
I'm draft pilled right now.
I love the draft talk too. If you want to hear more of that, we'll do a ton of it during the playoffs and right after them. So subscribe to the Ball Patreon. We'll do like 100 fucking podcasts. Anyway, so let's go over to the West where I have an admission to make and I'm very embarrassed. I was like, before last night, I was like,
sorry, I saw what Ben said in the comments. A Wemby Brandon Sanderson pick. I gotta tweet that. With the Demi Lovato get a job, stay away from her thing.
The crossover
Wemby, no, I gotta get Wemby connected with Steve Erickson. Get away from that casual. Get out of here.
So I have an admission to make that I'm very embarrassed by, which is I almost talked myself back into the Phoenix Suns.
Let's go.
I was like this close to talking myself back into the Phoenix Suns. And then if you didn't catch this, they started their game against the Clippers last night, and they were down 32-6 at one point.
Oh my God. I saw that
35-4 at one point. They were losing to the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard and without James Harden, and the Suns were only missing Yusuf Nurkic. I'm like to the point with the Suns. I know we've kind of talked about them ad nauseum, so I don't want to go like super long on them, but there are reports coming out that Frank Vogel could lose his job already before the playoffs. They're going to almost certainly be in best case scenario. They're in the 6th seed. They're likely to finish in like the 7 or 8 seed. It's just, it couldn't get any worse for the Suns right now than it is.
They're Jover, right? Like I think that they're the worst. We talked about the most depressing situations in the NBA, and I was listening back. We were talking about the Bulls and the Hornets before the season, and we were like, which of them is the most depressing? It's now the Suns, like bar none. I would be shocked if they won a playoff series, like genuinely shocked. Like even if they end up like against like the Clippers, I still think
they're almost they can't face the Clippers. The Clippers are almost
locked out of that.
The Clippers and the Mavericks with one more win from each of those teams in the last 3 games are going to almost certainly be locked. The Clippers are locked into the 4 seed basically. And then the Mavericks and the Clippers are going to be the first round almost certainly. It's like there's like an 89% chance that happens.
Man, Suns Thunder, huh? So that's probably what it's going to be.
Right now, if you're looking at the standings, the Clippers are the 4 seed and they are 51-28. The Suns are 5 games back from them. They can't catch them. The Pelicans are 4 games back from them. They can't catch them. And then the Mavericks are 2 games back from them, and they could basically only flip spots. So it's almost certainly going to be Clippers Mavericks. And then right now, if the playoffs started today, it would be Thunder Pelicans in the first round. And then the play-in would be Suns versus Kings. And then by the time we get to the end of the regular season here, the odds are it's going to be either Warriors or Lakers versus Suns in the first play-in game.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the Thunder, I don't know. The Thunder like can't really punish the Suns the way that some of these other teams can. But it's just like they have such terrible vibes, and the Thunder are just so much more talented. I know I've kind of made my shtick that like the Thunder aren't going to be ready for the playoffs, but I think the Suns are just dead on arrival, man. Like, and it's brutal. Like, I feel kind of bad for Frank Vogel if he actually gets fired over this, because it's like not
over
his
one
fucking
season.
fault. Yeah,
This roster is like a joke, dude. Like I said, like I said this on the Patreon podcast. I actually think their roster is better than last year, and when they're all healthy, because last year after the Durant trade, they just had no depth. Like their fourth best player was like Torrey Craig, because DeAndre Ayton had decided he was done with the team. Like that, they have more talent this year, but guess what? So does the Western Conference. And that is the reality, is that a lot of these teams are going to end up having to blow it up after the season or make massive changes after the season, because the West is just too good. Like I said before, the Warriors have a better record and a harder strength of schedule than they had last year when they were the 6 seed, and they're the 10 seed right now. In the East, they would be like the 5 seed, I think.
Yeah.
Like it's got to the point where the strength of the Western Conference, just like it was for so long, has made it so that these teams are going to have to make massive moves. And even like you said, you brought up the Thunder, right?
Yeah.
The Thunder and the Suns played earlier in this season. And by the way, do you know what happened in the last Thunder-Suns game? The Suns got fucking wiped by them, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't play in that game.
Yeah.
And then in the game before that, the Thunder and the Suns faced off. Nurkic had 31 rebounds in that game. And the Thunder won.
Let's go.
So like, even if they get they get up into the 6th seed and they get the Thunder, I'm taking the Thunder. Shai looks back. He scored 40 points in his last game that he played. The team that I think is going to be the sexy upset pick in the West, like the team that is going to be likely to be upset, is the Wolves, I think, because I think that the Thunder are going to end up either getting like the Pelicans or the Suns, and everyone will be like, well, they'll probably beat them. Although I'm sure there are some people in the media that will just look at the rosters.
Yeah.
And just be like, oh, well, the Thunder have the Suns have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. They're winning that series. Even though the Thunder just make much more sense as a team all together.
Yes.
And then, like, I think the Wolves are the team that everyone thinks is going to get upset in this.
Yeah.
Because they're going to play like the Lakers or the Warriors or the Suns, and everyone's going to pick against the Wolves. And I'm kind of slowly talking myself into the Wolves as more of a legit threat. I've been for the last month as being like, I think that people might be sleeping on what they can with their defense. Whoever they face in the first round, I'm not hyper confident in those lower teams. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not confident. Like, I know on paper I should be confident in the Lakers and the Suns because of who are on their roster, but I think I would take the Wolves over them in a series.
Yes, I agree. I think the Wolves are getting disrespected like a little bit too much, and who knows? Maybe that might blow up in my face. The Wolves always zag when I zig on them. Like,
it's true.
That might be the kiss of death. That might be the kiss of death that I believe in them this postseason.
So you didn't believe in them before the season, or you did?
No, I didn't. I picked the fucking under because I said, and what I said was, like, Lucy with the football. I'm not getting burned again like I did last year, and they. And you were like, no, I'll go back for one more, and they rewarded you.
Let's go. I was gonna say the Wolves were my team that I was like, I'm not giving up on them. I am locked in on the Wolves being a legit top seed in this conference, and I don't care that I got burnt by them last year. Their team is too talented. Their team is too deep, and even like you said, like, they've been performing well without Karl Anthony Towns. He's coming back. Like their top 8 is now. Look, other teams, you're going to take other teams because of the strength of their top 3 or 4. Like, you would take the Celtics over the Wolves, for example, even though the Celtics don't have as strong of like a 6 through 8 as the Wolves have. But the Wolves have, like, where's the weakness in that top 8?
It's like the offense and like Karl Anthony Towns going doo-doo mode in the playoffs is probably the biggest concern. Like, you know, and Ant not being ready, I guess.
I think, like, if Kyle Anderson isn't completely broken his shot and he can figure out a way to be a little bit more viable offensively, like he's kind of figured out over the last month or two, they have like 3 starter level guys coming off the bench, and Nickeil Alexander, Naz Reid, and Kyle Anderson. And if any team can benefit from shrinking the rotation, their strength of their top 8 is like they cut out their 9th, 10th, 11th man, which is like where they start to like really struggle. And you're looking at a team that just like really doesn't have a ton of flaws outside of like, and like I said, people are freaking out, people freaked out over the Joel Embiid. Is he going to be the same? Is he going to be able to whatever? Joel looks pretty fine. Like, I don't really think physically he looks okay. And like, if that's the case,
he just looks tired to me. Like, when I've seen him, he just looks like
he's playing himself into shape. Yeah. But like, Karl Anthony Towns had the same surgery as him. I don't really think that's going to be as big of an issue if he can play 2 games down the stretch here. And like, so I just did my rankings for the West, for the East.
Yeah.
So I'll do my rankings for the West right now, just as we're like a few days out of. I have Nuggets 1. I have Wolves 2. I have Mavs 3. I have Thunder 4. I have Clippers 5. I have Lakers 6. I have Suns 7. And I have Warriors 8. And I think that, and by the way, some of these teams, like, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the Pelicans. Fuck.
Damn.
Also, do you think the Clippers or the Lakers have a better chance? Because someone just brought that up. Do you think the Clippers or the Lakers have the better chance
in the West
of winning a series?
Oh, of winning a series? The Clippers.
But the Clippers play the Mavericks in the first round.
That's true.
The Lakers could still get the Thunder, which I think is a bad matchup for the Thunder.
It is a bad matchup for the Thunder, but I also the Lakers are, I don't know. I just really don't think the Lakers like shenanigans are gonna like, they're like the fucking.
We're going back to back. Second straight year, Sam doesn't believe in the Heat of the Lakers, baby.
That's what I'm saying. They are like the Heat though, where everyone's like, it'll be fine. They walked into like a fucking mash unit of a Grizzlies matchup. And then they also caught the Warriors. Like, their side of the bracket was insanely easy last year. Like, you had a destroyed Grizzlies. People hadn't caught up to the fact that the Warriors were Dunions. And the Kings went diaper mode. Like, Sabonis shat himself in the playoffs. Like, they got the best matchup they possibly could have got in the second round with the Warriors. And that Grizzlies team was just so fucking injured. They're not good. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I've at least seen the Clippers play 30 games of like really high level basketball. They kicked the shit out of the Celtics earlier
Lakers
this year.
Has been pretty good recently. Lakers have been very good recently. When they're healthy, they've looked like a different team the last month or two. I'll say that much. Like the Lakers have been, like you said. Remember earlier when you were saying, "Oh well, if the Lakers aren't going to hit their over." Well, they might, because they went insane down the stretch of this season.
I checked it. They're eliminated. It was 48.5.
Okay. So they're going to come close.
We're good.
Though. They're going to come close. They're going to come close, and they have, let's see. They have wins. They have a lot of really good wins against good teams. Even without what's that?
In March and April.
Fair, but also they need to win those games to get to where
they do.
So you're telling me that if they get the Thunder in the first round, you think they have no chance in that series?
No, I don't think they have no chance. I think they have a
lesser chance than the Clippers have of beating the Mavs.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with that. I also don't like, I know the Mavs are similarly like very hot right now. And the Mavs have like really turned like a corner, and like Luka is like such a high level player, but just in terms of like everything. But I also think that like, the Mavs also kind of feel like a little soft to me. You know what I'm saying? Like they've looked really good down the stretch. They've looked awesome similarly like in March, and kind of the teams all come together like post trade deadline. But I also don't necessarily think that the Mavericks are like great shakes. I don't think that they're that much better than like the Mavericks teams have been in the past, given the Mavericks teams in the past have gotten to the Western Conference Finals. So that's fine.
Question.
Yes.
Do you know what their record is with Daniel Gafford starting with Luka?
Let me see. I'm going to guess it is 16-7.
They're currently 15-2 in the games that
Ooh,
Derek
okay.
Jones Jr. and Daniel Gafford have started. They, at one point with the starting lineup of Luka a week ago, with Luka, Kyrie, Derek Jones Jr., PJ Washington, and Daniel Gafford, they were 11-0, and I don't believe they've lost since this tweet was sent out. So the signs of the Mavs kind of being the hot post-deadline team, whether it is Mickey Mouse March or whether it's real, we'll see in the playoffs. I've bought back into the Mavs as like second or third best chance to win the West, just because, like I said, I don't love the players that they got necessarily. I just think they were such massive upgrades over the players that they had before that it matters in terms of the talent upgrade. And I think that with the Luka Kyrie offensive shot quality they're going to get, the bar is very low for what you need to do to be a role player on the Mavericks. You basically need to hit open shots, keep the ball moving, defend and rebound. And like, I think that they have enough to make a potential conference finals run based on what we'll see. The Mavs Clippers that's probably going to be the best first round series, I would imagine. And I'm still going to stick with my Lakers below everyone else here, just because if you're in the West play-in, there's a chance you just miss the playoffs. To me,
Sure.
The East is like the Sixers and the Heat are probably going to make the playoffs because they'll get the Bulls, and anything can happen in one game, but you get the Bulls and the Hawks in the second play-in game versus getting like the Warriors.
Yeah.
And I trust like the Warriors or even the Kings to have a random game where they can knock off a team and potential. And like the Lakers right now, if the playoffs started today, they have to win 2 games just to get in still. They still have to win 2 games just to get in. The Clippers at least are locked into their seed that's higher, which is why I'm going to have them. So let me run down this here, because the team that I'm fully out on is the Kings. I just don't.
Yeah. I think everybody's out on them.
Yeah, I mean,
They're
between
done.
the injuries and like we've said time and time again, I'm like, I know their defense has been better recently. I'm just like, Fox and Sabonis just isn't enough for me to win a playoff series. Let alone like maybe they get out of the play-in, but I think they get smoked by one of the top 3 teams in the West if they get into a series with them. So I have the Kings 10, I have the Warriors 9, I have the Suns 8. I might flip those Suns and Warriors, but the Warriors still have to win 2 to get in, so I'm going to keep that. So I'm going to go Kings, Warriors, then a tier up, I'll go Lakers, Suns. Then a tier up from that, I'll go Pelicans, Clippers, Thunder. And then above that, I have Mavericks, Wolves. And then in its top tier is Nuggets.
Interesting. You're putting the Mavs with the Wolves. That's interesting. I get it. By the way, I don't think you're crazy for that. I get it. I wouldn't do it, but I understand the thinking.
My thought process on this is like, there's so few I've been higher on the Thunder throughout the course of the season. There's also a slight chance they get upset in the first round.
Yeah.
And there's also a chance the Mavs get not even upset. They just lose in the first round of Clippers. I'm not saying that isn't the case.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing the Clippers' bodies kind of fall apart down the course of this season. The Mavs are a little bit fresher. And if a team, here's the thing, if any of these teams win a first round series, I'm going to go, I'm going Zach Lowe mode.
Okay.
If a team wins a first round series in the West and Bobby Marks, they start to look around and they go, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. If I'm another team, that isn't the Nuggets, by the way. Bobby, I always believed in the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic, by the way. There were people in the media, not me, but other people that have different social security numbers, people that have different relatives, people that do not live in a penthouse in Manhattan, people that are in a different zip code than me. Not me. I always believed in the Denver Nuggets. By the way, I'm picking them again. I just want to remind you, Bobby Marks, that I am picking the Denver. I'm like, everyone's picking the Nuggets, dude. You're not unique. And maybe this might even be like confirmation bias because of the championship year, but no one's going to pick against Jokic and the Nuggets until they lose.
Yeah, no, I think it's. By the way, you don't hear Zach talking a lot about his Bucks pick from before the year these days.
Well, KOC, it took him until this week to be like, yeah, maybe the Bucks aren't winning the finals. Bro, remember I picked the Bucks Nuggets before the season.
Yeah.
I was out by like the third week of the season.
Yeah.
I was like, this team stinks. I was like, why did I talk myself into this team? They don't make any sense. Then they fired their coach and their best player got hurt. So I feel like that's not really something that I probably would have reconsidered this a lot earlier if I were KOC.
I've got a date with Draft Combat with KOC. I've got to take a hard look at Steven Castle and see if KOC is about to own us yet again on some Brandon Miller shit.
What does he have him number 1 overall?
He had him number 1 overall.
I mean, look, if you want to make the argument that I made, if you want to make the argument that I made about drafting guys that are just good basketball players that are really athletic, Castle's kind of up that alley. He can't shoot for shit, but if you figure out the shooting and he has a high floor, his defense is going to be really good and he can pass. And he's a good connective playmaker too. So like he has the makings of like tall guard potential star if he could figure out some of the shooting and creation stuff. But that's also like the most important thing for a guard.
Yeah, right.
Because like if you can't do that, then you're just a bit role player basically.
I want to make fun of him for this, but I also like don't have another player where I'm like, yo, you should use your number 1 pick on Reed Shepherd, who got like owned. Like I still think I might pick Reed number 1 overall or the French guy Richhauser, but like I don't feel good about either of those. Reed
would have to be the shortest number 1 overall pick since Allen Iverson, right?
Yeah, for sure.
How tall is Derrick Rose? I don't think they were 3.
I think Derrick Rose was like 6 even. Maybe he was pretty sure he was shorter than I think people thought.
Kyrie's a good one, actually. Kyrie's probably the answer.
Yeah, that's dead. I think Kyrie's 6 even.
I was gonna say I think it's Derrick Rose, Kyrie, Iverson, and then Reed would be following in the lineage of the hyper athletic, talented number 1 overall pick.
Yeah. One of those things is not like the others. Yeah, you can't pick Reed 1 overall. Like I say I would do it, but like somebody else, like a GM is gonna pick like Sarr or fucking or the French guy or someone like that. So.
Tools, baby.
Tools.
I told you, people love. We love tools.
People love tools. James Wiseman type beat.
I mean, Sarr definitely has some James Wiseman potential. I mean, I'm not saying he is James Wiseman, but he's the same mold of prospect, but his defense is way better. That's the thing is that is that I'm fine missing on a big. My whole thing with missing on bigs is if I miss on a big and it's like James Wiseman or Jahlil Okafor, where like they're just like they can't survive on defense, that's tougher for me. Like Edie is a tougher miss for me than a guy like Klingon or Sarr, where it's like, oh, well, I at least know their floor is going to be high enough. And by the way, if we just talk about the importance of being like a good shooter and creator as a guard, it's basically the complete opposite for bigs, where you have to be good on defense unless you're like literally Nikola Jokic. And like, he's become a good defender, like we said, but like you have, like, if you want to survive, like your absolute floor needs to be passable on defense as a big.
Yeah.
You know,
now Klingon should go top 5 in this draft, which is kind of scary because he's like, I see Klingon as like kind of like big Bam Adebayo when Bam Adebayo came out, where he was kind of like, you know, raw. Like Bam's like 6'10" and Donovan Klingon's like 7'1" or 7'2".
Yeah.
Like, so he's like big like Bam, but Bam was like so raw and like didn't have like a lot of these like skills coming out, and he ended up like going like 9. And like
I think Klingon's like, I think he's like Gobert. Like that's, to me, that's like what his ceiling could be. I don't think he's going to be that good, but I think that that's the kind of idea that you have if you're drafting him.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be like good Luke Cornett. Like, it's probably closer to what he's going to end up being. But I think that's fine in this draft. Again, this draft is bad, so.
There's been so many defensive centers that just have a little bit of offensive juice that have been good recently. That I like Hartenstein, Jared Allen, those kind of guys that like I would be fine taking Klingon top 5. Like there's no way that Klingon isn't going to be like one of the 10 best defensive centers in the NBA. And like, how good does his offense need to be for him to become a good starter?
Yeah, he's probably the biggest sure thing on the board, actually. Like if you really value floor, I think you should probably pick Klingon pretty high. You'll just have a good starting center for a while. Yeah.
You love floor.
I love floor. I do love high floors, but I also just don't, but also like bigs. How you feel about shooting is how I feel about bigs that like aren't like 3-point shooters. Like,
well, bigs that aren't like offensively skilled bigs, because offensively skilled bigs are like, if you can get an offensively skilled big that is a solid or passable defender, that is good enough to make your team into like, I mean, we've seen it recently with Sabonis, Şengün, and that's, I heard an argument. So I just before we get out of here, I did hear an argument for Zach Edey as the best player in this class. And by the way, before you laugh, I like the person who made the argument too. His name, he was on Chucking Darts this past week. His name's Matt Powers at DraftPow, POW. He was basically he here. I know it's contrarian, so here.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes. He basically argued this in a draft that's filled with like a bunch of question marks. We don't know anything. Taking the guy who was like the most dominant college player that we've seen in like a decade, even if he was older, even if he's massive, and those guys tend to dominate and whatever. The league is built on outliers.
That's true.
And his thing was the combination of Edey's size and touch and just the ability to like physically dominate someone can translate if you squint enough, basically. Like if you carve out a role, and Russillo's argument back to this was like, there's only like 10 guys in the NBA who have more than like 3 post-ups a game or whatever. Mm-hmm. I do think that Edey is like a pretty good passer, which is, that's something. Like a lot of like he'll get compared to Enes Kanter. He's a much better and more willing passer than Enes Kanter ever was. He'll get compared to like, I don't know, maybe even like an early career like Andre Drummond or something. But I do think that considering how good he was in college and how massive he is, and the fact that he does have that touch, there is a world where Zach Edey just is like really good. And I don't think it's like completely insane. And I think you want to talk about like, he might be a high floor, or I'm sorry, an average floor, underrated ceiling guy, because if he can put it all together and figure it out, there's a chance that he can be, a offensively skilled big who you can run some offense through. And when he doesn't have the ball, he can space a little bit because he's got decent touch. Maybe you can mold the shot. He can set screens, and like, the thing that everyone is most worried about is what happened in that national championship game where they just went after him over and over. And there's just going to be so many athletic guards that carve him up in the NBA. And he is honestly like beyond the defensive stuff. Like, I don't care about the perimeter stuff. No, how many bigs can't guard on the perimeter? Like all of them? Like there's like 5 guys that can. Someone said like a worse Marc Gasol. There you go. Something like that. Yeah. And like, if he can become like that, then he might have a pathway to being like a good NBA player. I'm a little bit skeptical on the full ceiling that he was pitching, but I think that like, there's no chance that he's not a backup center in the NBA.
Yeah. I think he actually has a relatively high floor too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think like, think about like guys like Taco Fall even like played some NBA minutes, just by being very big. And like Zach Edey's better than Taco Fall. And
if Taco Fall was as well conditioned as Zach Edey, he would have been like a dominant college player. The thing, people talked about this in the Discord the other day. They were saying, they were like, the thing with Taco Fall was that he could only play like 20 minutes a game. Edey played like the majority of the national championship game, and they were going at him. They exhausted him, which, if you want to make another anti-Edey argument, they just went after him over and over. And by the end, he couldn't hang. But like, there's a chance, like with the conditioning, with, his improved mobility, even if it's still like his biggest red flag, there's a chance.
Can I list you all the players who have won multiple Naismith Awards like Zach Edey has? Can
I guess? Who was the last one? Was it Ralph Sampson?
That's you bingo. Ralph Sampson was the last one. There's one other.
Kareem
person.
Abdul-Jabbar.
Very close.
Bill Walton.
Still very close, but you're
Wilt
almost
Chamberlain?
there. No, not Wilt. Still very close. You're like dancing around who this is.
Elgin Baylor?
Now, Bill Russell.
Oh, I didn't realize that he won multiple in college. I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So
Well, same era.
yeah. So some might say that's pretty good. Ralph Sampson and Bill. Oh, sorry. No, you're right. It was Bill Walton. I'm sorry. I'm a loser.
Yeah, I was like, I'm
You're
fairly
correct.
certain Bill Walton won multiple
You did.
players.
You did. He won 3. He won 3, and Ralph Sampson won 3. Sorry. I was looking at the wrong thing. Now some of you might say, huh, well, that's pretty good company. Also, like everyone nowadays, like if you have a good season, you just come out in the NBA. It's not like the women's game, like where
that's the thing about Edie that's weird, is that my thought was, why didn't he just or he went back because of NIL money? He can't even make NIL money because he's from Canada. They're not because of his visa. How insane is that?
That's crazy. That's so funny.
Foreign players can't even make money on NIL. So I was like, well, why the fuck did he go back? But I guess the thought was win his second one and potentially win a national championship and come out during a worse draft and maybe go in the lottery. And honestly, I think, but I'll just real quick on the guys who I think are rising up the board and I think will be lottery guys by draft day. Jared McCain from Duke will almost certainly go in the lottery by draft day.
Yes, I really like him. I think he's going to be. Friend of the pod, Vagberg was putting him as the magic pick. He
makes a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, I really like him.
I think he'll move up the board. I think right now, if a guy, it's funny, I'm in on him and I'm out on Filipowski. I'm like, I don't see it at all with Filipowski. He's 7 foot and he'll probably get drafted off of his size and his pedigree, but I just don't think that he is. You want to talk about a guy that like maybe he develops the shot and like the passing is like decent enough and he has some defensive question marks. Like he's the guy that I would completely avoid in that range. I think McCain is the guy that rises up the board. And he falls down. And then the other guy that I think is going to rise up the board, who's currently projected on Tankathon to go 22, is Devin Carter of Providence. I think he's just a team's going to be like, he's a high floor guy. You can't miss on him. And those guys, I don't think McCain and Carter have high ceilings, but I do think that they're kind of can't miss guys in a bad draft. And those guys tend to get a little bit overvalued. So,
I really like them. I talked myself into Reed and Jacoby Walter, even though I know a lot of people don't like Jacoby Walter, but I don't know what to do with Mark Sears. Mark Sears is like interesting to me, but we've never seen like a small guard like do very well. You know what I'm saying? Like he's 5'11". It's tough, but I do like his game outside of being small.
That's how I feel about Rob Dillingham. Like if Rob Dillingham was 6'5", I would take him with the first pick in this draft.
Yes.
But he's 6'2" and is like very undersized with not great tools. So
yeah. He's a good shot maker though.
He's a great shot maker, really good passer too. I think as we get closer to the draft, I might just draft him based on aesthetic. I can't pass up on a good hooper. Like if he hits, I'm going to be so mad. I talked myself out of Keontae George for the same reasons. That I'm talking myself into for Rob, because I was like, everyone is always like, oh, you overvalue guards, like whatever. I'm like, but I missed on Keontae because of this. Although Rob was just a much better college player than Keontae George was too.
Yeah, Rob, I'm interested to because I was like out on Rob when I looked at his stats, and then I watched tape on Rob, and I was like, okay. Yeah. Okay, actually, I might be in. You know what I'm saying? Like if you just go calculator rat on Rob, you're not gonna like him. But if you watch Rob in the games, I'm intrigued. I'm still thinking it out. So
Rob's a bucket.
We should get the no dunks guys in here and make them do a Jacoby Walter roundtable where
I was gonna say,
make them agree with us.
Let's get the no dunks guys in here and say, don't research anything on these guys based on their names. Which ones will have a better NBA career?
There we go.
Just run down the names. Just be like, here. I do think we should do an episode where we just do like okay, I can see this guy becoming a star in the NBA just based on his name, and I can see this guy like Zachariah Richier or whatever. He has such a bust name. He might be good. He might be good, but like I've never seen a bigger bust. But to be fair, I also said Jalen Williams had bust. I described him as having bust face. Because he looked tired all the time. Which every time I saw J-Dub, I was like, this guy looks fucking tired as shit, dude. And I'm not drafting a tired guy in the lottery. But I did like his game, and he's turned out to be way better than I ever expected. So
maybe KOC was cooking when he put Steven Castle first overall, then, because that's a pretty good name. Donovan Klingon's a pretty good name.
It's a good name. The Connecticut guys have good names. Even Caravan in the second round, that's a great name. Alex Caravan, I like that name. There's a handful. We'll have Chiodo on for this, and we'll do an episode because he loves to do like Johnny Furphy. I like some of his game. That sounds like a bust to me. It just sounds like a bust.
Yeah. Mattis, what's his name? Mattis Buzelis. Yeah, that's a bust name. I also don't like him. I think he's bad. And Celtics Matt and I argue about that. I think he's not going to be good.
Topic, based on recent history, might be a hit, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nikola, I think he's also Serbian. They both play on the Serbian national team. I'm running down the second round right now. Justin Edwards, that's a home run name.
Carlton Carrington.
Oh, that's Bub Carrington. Yeah, Carlton.
That's check.
Are we just being xenophobic though?
Maybe. But does it work? Who's to say? It might just work. So,
how would we have felt about Alperen Şengün in 2021 if we did this exercise?
Okay, but when was the last time the NBA had a good international player, though?
It's a good point. I was gonna say we're going full Gilbert Arenas right now.
Gilbert Arenas just picking the biggest losing battle where it's like, yeah, Jason Tatum's better than Jokic, Embiid, Shea, Luka,
Jalen Green's better than Jalen Brunson. I don't know if you saw that one, but
oh man, that's really bad. That's really bad. It is so funny that there's like, if Embiid didn't get hurt, we would have a first team All NBA that was just totally international.
We would, yeah.
That's
a good point.
So, has that ever happened before? I don't think so.
Definitely not. There's no chance. Yeah. We might get it next year. Also, I'm very pissed because the Sixers would have ran away with the 2 seed if Joel didn't get injured, and we would be set so fucking well right now.
I was cooking. I said the Celtics. I went back and listened to the pods again. I said Sixers would have been the 2 seed. If
they should have been hurt. Honestly, if not only that, if Maxey doesn't get his concussion right during the Mavericks game, then they lose to the Hospital Grizzlies and the Hospital Nets. Without Maxey, they would be set up to potentially still get a 2 or 3 seed right now. I'm so fucking pissed. It's so annoying.
Just got to get out of the plan. I believe in you.
Oh God.
Send the Pacers there.
Watch. Oh, by the way, we did hit 600 Patreon subscribers. So if you haven't signed up for the Patreon already, sign up for the Patreon. We'd really appreciate it. But we did hit 600 paid Patreon subscribers, which means the drunk streams will be coming back for the playoffs. I will be getting drunk and embarrassing myself on playback. So follow us on playback TV/YouKnowBall. Sign up for the Patreon if you haven't already. Also, we have a YouTube clips channel, YouKnowBall Clips. We're pushing a lot of shit right now. Visit the link tree in the description to get all of that shit. And then, eventually we're going to have to plan a live show. That's the next step.
Yes.
As the podcast grows, we'll have to plan a live show.
Trill can't cut out what I say in a live show. So everyone needs to be excited about this.
There you go. That would be great. Yeah. Well, Sam won't be able to make it down from Maine, so we'll just have him Skype in on his 2G internet, and we'll.
So we'll have to get me a box to stand on because I'm so short. I'm so small. I'm a baby.
And also, to answer the question in the comments, I'm not going to tell people what's going to happen at 3,000 subs. You'll just have to see what happens when we get to 3,000 subs.
Let's just say, if you're familiar with the book talk nomenclature about Court of Roses and Thorns, let's just say we'll be adding a little spice to the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. Or if you're familiar with the YouTube person who said that addiction didn't exist.
We're bringing that crunchy crystal white lady who raps onto the is our third mic. And if anyone wants to do that, so
Let's go. We're getting it. All right. Thank you guys for joining. And I'll be back later in the night for the end of the Mavericks and Heat game on here. So join me if you're around.
I might hop on for that.
Peace.
I might
Sweet.
hop on for that. Maybe I'll be there. Who knows?
Let's get it.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.